You're listening to the Mind Over Finger podcast, episode number 134.
Welcome to the Mind Over Finger podcast, discussions on mindful music making, efficient practice, and building a purposeful career. And now, your host, violinist, teacher, and high-performance coach for musicians, Dr. Renee Paul Gauthier.
So, hello, everyone. It's so great to be here. Welcome to this special live podcast recording of the Mind Over Finger podcast. I'm live in the Mind Over Finger community with the amazing Kate Kayaian, cellist and career coach for musicians. And this is the first of 3 interviews with movers and shakers in the classical music industry. Later this summer, I'm going to be talking with Aubrey Bergauer, who is changing the narrative for the performing arts. I'm also going to talk to Absin Gupta, who's the artistic director of planning at Carnegie Hall. And today, I'm with the wonderful Kate Kayaian, who aims to rewrite the scripts for classical musicians and help them create their personalized, their own blueprint that is going to lead them to the career and lifestyle that they want. And I want to hear about all of this and what that can look like for the people here with us today and for all of the podcast listeners in their own lives. And so I want to welcome you if you're here live with us and encourage you to share in the comments and ask any questions that you have for Kate. And let's have some fun. And let's start by hearing all about you, Kate. I think you've listened to the podcast before, so I know you know what I'm going to be asking. So tell us about you and your musical journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Renee, for having me. Yes, I am a huge fan of the Mind Over Finger podcast. In fact, that's how I know about you. And when I first knew that we were going to be meeting, I was so excited because I was such a huge fan of the podcast. So this is a real treat to be a guest on it today. And welcome, everybody. Look forward to your questions. Okay, so my story, I guess. I think I started the way most of us start, at least as string players and pianists. You know, I was 4.5 and my parents thought it would be a good idea for their kids to learn an instrument. And I chose the cello. And yeah, I mean, they just sort of had some friends play the violin, the piano, the cello, and I ended up with the cello. And I was lucky. I grew up just north of Chicago, not too far from you. And I had access to the Music Center of the North Shore, what is now the Music Institute of Chicago. And I just lucked into having access to great teachers and amazing training and opportunities to play chamber music and youth orchestra. And of course, here at the Chicago Symphony, and was surrounded by amazing peers, many of whom have also been guests on your podcast. And from there, I went on to New England Conservatory of Music, where I did my bachelor's and studied with Colin Carr, who was just an incredible teacher. I learned so much about making music. It was beyond just playing the cello, and he really wanted to talk about thinking about music as a whole. And he also, I think because he went to the Menuhin School, he was a prodigy. He never even graduated from high school. He had this, and still does has this unquenchable thirst for knowledge. He always wanted to know what classes I was taking. And I'd be like, I just went to some English class. No, tell me about it. And that really inspired in me a love of learning and knowing the importance of knowing more than just how to play your instrument. From there, I went to the New World Symphony. And I have to say, with a lot of these things, I just kind of lucked into it. And I was always sort of going against the grain in these decisions. I was supposed to have gone to University of Southern California. That's where my teacher students tended to go. And I changed my mind at the last minute and went to New England Conservatory. And same with New World. I was supposed to do one thing. I had my plan for post-graduation, and I just was kind of invited to go to New World at the last minute and went with it. And then from there, just the usual summers at Spoleto and Tanglewood, and then to Boston, and where I started, I guess, what you would call a freelance career. Yeah. So I kind of did everything once I was in Boston. I did some chamber music. I did some solo things. I did a lot of contemporary music. I had fallen in love with contemporary music at New World Symphony. Just the experience of having composers come in and working with them and recording things. I just loved it. And so I joined Boston Modern Orchestra Project, played with them a lot, Odyssey Opera, did a lot of smaller ensembles. I taught, I ran the chamber music program for the big youth orchestra, Boston Youth Symphony Orchestras. I worked at BUTI. I just sort of did a little bit of everything, as we do as freelancers. And then I got a very nice job at a prep school outside of Boston, Noble and Greenough School, where I directed the strings. I ran the chamber music program. I taught cello. I conducted an orchestra. I worked in the admissions department. It was like, I just did it all. I just ate it up. It was amazing.
It really shows how that's what musicians' lives are like. There's so many hats that we get to wear.
So many hats. And eventually, by the time I was deeply entrenched in that life, I had to make a decision. My fiance lived and worked in Bermuda, of all places, which, yes, it's a 90-minute flight from Boston. So it was a pretty easy commute. But still, I had to make a decision of whether I was going to go here, where I am, spoiler alert, or if he was going to move to Boston. And, I realized that I was working 7 days a week. I never had a weekend off. I would come to the school on a Monday and they say, "Oh, how was your weekend?" And I'm like, oh. They would be exhausted just hearing about all the teaching and concerts I did. And I realized that was not only was it not sustainable, but I wasn't doing things that I loved to do. And I realized somebody made a joke about my retirement party and what they would do for my retirement party. And it suddenly dawned on me that if my life didn't change and I was doing the exact same things, I was playing great concerts. The school was amazing. They let me travel all over and do what I needed to do. They loved that I was a performing cellist. But I knew that if I was still living the same life when I was retiring, I was going to be deeply disappointed in myself. And I needed to make a change. So I did. I left and I moved to Bermuda, where I kind of reinvented the career again and focused solely on playing chamber music and solo recitals and going on tours around the States and playing concerts, which was amazing. The most amazing thing was just to have all of these hours free to practice and plan and do what I needed to do.
That's incredible. And then?
Oh my God, you're right. It goes on and on and on. And then the pandemic hit, right? And no more concerts. It canceled a big concert tour that I was doing on the West Coast that I'd been planning for months and months and months, as we do. And I, like all of us, just the work stopped and I had to figure out what to do. And I didn't have the answer. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I suddenly saw that festivals were getting canceled left and right. I was thinking a lot about how important festivals had been to me, summer festivals growing up, and how important they had been to my development as a young cellist. And, because I had been traveling so much, I had been teaching on Zoom for years. I think I'd been teaching on I mean, I was old school. I started on Skype and then taught on Zoom for like 5 years before the pandemic.
Wow.
And I had also worked at a lot of festivals. I had run a lot of programs. I had worked in admissions at the school. So I felt like I had these, some of them I had dabbled in, some of them I had deep knowledge of, but I felt like I had all of these skills that I could put together, and it made me the perfect person to run the first online festival. And I put together the virtual summer cello festival. I figured we can't do chamber music or orchestra anyway, so I might as well just focus on cello. And it was incredible. I had these amazing, talented high school and college and grad school cellists come together. I had teachers from all over the world. They wanted something to do, right? And they believed in the mission. And it was a beautiful, beautiful festival, which we did last year. We did it for a second year. And then that led to, they wanted to keep going. And so that led to the Bridge Online Cello Studio, where I taught on Sundays, and we had a series of master classes and performance classes all on Zoom. Again, students from all over the world, which was amazing. And then colleagues started asking, hey, I want to put together a project, but I don't know how. Can you help? Can I work with you? And it just sort of organically morphed into a coaching career. And it started purely as just business coaching of this is how you do it, this is how you put it together, and has evolved even more into just, it's business and mindset coaching. It's a little bit more holistic, and helping people recognize their dreams, find clarity about what they want to do, and put the pieces together of how they can make that happen.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm so privileged because we're friends, so I get to hear so many amazing stories from you, and I love watching all of these things evolve as time goes. And one thing that you mentioned is in the recent post, I think, where you were talking about the fault, how a lot of things kind of we just fall into it. And I feel like that was kind of similar for me as well, where oftentimes some of the decisions I've made were not conscious decisions based on asking myself, what do I want? And how can I make that happen? Or just even try to see if I can make it happen. But it was following the beaten path and what had been done before and what people were advising me to do. So I love that your story shows us that even if you do some of that, which is follow along what is traditionally done, there's also the possibility of, I'm going to use your own words, changing the script. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what does that look like? Because it takes a lot of courage first to ask the question, even dare to ask the question. Because a lot of people say, oh, I can't just do what I want. I have responsibilities and I have to be reasonable and look at what is possible. So they don't even ask the questions. But then once you ask the question, facing the answers is not always easy. And then you have to take action, which is super not easy. So tell us everything. Change our lives.
Yeah, one example, two examples. One was telling my high school teacher that I, in fact, was not going to USC to study with her friend who all of her students went to, but I was going to NEC, where none of her students had ever gone, where she didn't know Colin Carr. She knew his reputation, but that was just going completely against the grain of I was in this privileged situation where I basically had a clear path to an incredible teacher, an incredible school. And I just said, no, thanks. I'm going to do this. And she questioned it. And at the end of the day, she said, okay, you have to do what you want to do. And it was the best decision. Nothing against USC, or it was just, I knew I was moving in the right direction for me. And the other one was, you were at New World Symphony as well. You go and you are trained and you take orchestra auditions and you win a fabulous job, right? And I had sort of, as I said, fallen into it, and I loved it. I loved the concerts. I loved the opportunity to put together concerts of my own. I had so many great experiences, but I knew to my core that I did not want to be an orchestral player.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew it. I couldn't pretend. And I wasn't taking auditions, and I had to tell Michael Tilson Thomas that I was going to leave because I wanted to just go to Boston and play concerts that I wanted to play. And he thought I was crazy. Of course, everybody thought I was crazy, but it was the right decision for me. I think one thing that helps, because, and I see this in my clients and people I talk to all of the time, they are afraid of three things. They're afraid of what people will think if they go against the grain. So they're afraid of what will happen to their reputation. They are not afraid, but there's an assumption of, well, if this was really the right thing, other people would have done it first.
Right.
So they don't have the confidence to see that maybe they are going to be the first and people will follow them later. And then they say, well, I don't have the right skills to do it. Right. We musicians are not stupid. I mean, you can have all of the confidence in the world and the, growth mindset and mindfulness. Yeah. You can have all of these amazing tools, which we need. But if you do not know how to play octaves, you are not going to play the Dvorak Cello Concerto. You cannot will that into being. You have to have skills, and we know that. And the thing about skills is that they're pretty easy to learn. You can Google half of them, right? I mean, and so sometimes that can be just a fear that blocks them and stops them in their tracks. And sometimes it can be sort of an excuse to hide bigger fears. But I think that those fears.
That's one of the things that I have appreciated so much from my own venture in entrepreneurship and coaching is how in fields outside of music, or I would guess maybe medicine or architecture, you need precision for sure. You cannot mess up your plans if you're building a skyscraper, that's for sure. But this idea that you can have an idea and sort of you estimate how you can make it come to life and just start taking action right away, as opposed to practice for hours in days and weeks and months, and then you present this perfect package to an audience, is how we can give ourselves this permission of trying new things.
Absolutely.
Without having it being perfect.
Yeah. I mean, you don't build the festival and then announce it, right? You announce, I'm going to do this, and you just have for me, I knew how to do a lot of the different aspects, but there are a lot of things I didn't know how to do, and I figured them out along the way. But I gave myself the grace to say, you might mess up. That's okay, because you can fix it.
Yeah.
Right. I had the courage, I guess, is the right word, to say, whatever it is, I'll figure it out. And if I mess it up, I'll redo it and fix it.
Yeah.
It's not brain surgery. If I mess up, we're all going to be alive. It's going to be okay. Right.
And what's amazing about this is that allows you, and now all of the clients that you help, come up with these brilliant ideas, who are not just going to stay stuck in their heads, but will actually come out as, living entities and bring values to other people's lives.
Absolutely. I mean, just the projects that have come out for my clients. I mean, how is it possible that if everybody is so afraid that they're going to do the wrong thing, how is it that time after time, clients are having an idea and executing it, and their ideas are not successful because they're working with me, right? What I do as a coach is I encourage them, I guide them, I hold them accountable, but they're the ones doing the work. They're the ones having the idea and moving that needle and figuring out the skills and doing everything. How is it that time and time again, they're finding success. And what I'm finding and talking to people, and, it seems every time I publish another blog post, I'm getting emails saying like, me too, I don't know where to start. I want to do something. I'm afraid. What will people think? I hear this time and time again. And I just want to shout, I want to gather everybody in our industry into one big room and say, you all have ideas and you all want to do them. Let's just agree that it's going to be okay for us to do that.
Yeah. And
Right.
I think I took you on the tangent there, but I was asking, how does that look like to start maybe even contemplating, asking yourself questions, and how can one go about it?
Yeah, well, I think clarity is where people get stuck, and that's where you start. And I have a great worksheet on finding clarity and what you do. I can put that. I can send that to you to put out. But just different exercises to say, like, what are the skills you have? What are the skills that you need to build? What's the project? What's one step you can do today? What's another step, right? I always say that I like to dream big and long-term. I like to have a long-term vision of where I'm going, but I think very short-term in terms of my to-do list, right? Like,
yeah,
I want to save the world. I'm going to, I don't know, plant a tree today,
yeah,
one little thing at a time. For clarity, one thing that worked for me, and I think works for a lot of people, is to think back on how you were as a little kid before music took over your life. I mean, for me, I had two things. I was very independent minded. So like I said, I often just sort of went slightly against the grain. I was a Gen Xer. So I was a latchkey kid. I was on my own. I made my own decisions. And I also was a little budding entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was one summer my parents said, like, I'm sorry, like, I don't know what happened. I think my dad was laid off or something. They said, we can't afford to send you to summer camp this year, to cello camp, music camp. And I was so devastated. But instead of just staying home and sulking, I said, okay, well, there are a bunch of kids in my neighborhood that I babysat. The moms were like competing for my time to babysit. So, well, I'm just going to do a little summer camp in my backyard. All of the kids can come to me. We'll do projects and arts and crafts. I'll make money from every single family. And it's still the same amount of time for me. It was like a group coaching program at the age of 9.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It was perfect. It was great. So I was always that's what I loved to do as a kid. So I think I would start there. What are the things that you used to love to do? And how can you incorporate it into your life now? I mean, I think that a lot of musicians who are finding that they're just kind of stuck in this default mode and want to do something, they want to step up in some way, right? They want to, they're sort of bursting out of their skin to show some leadership in some way. There's so many different ways to do it. I mean, if you're in the back of the second violin section in your regional, pickup orchestra, you can be a leader in creating a wonderful environment. You can like bake cookies for rehearsal, right? Like there's always a way to lead no matter where you are. And so that's the thing. Like, did you always love to cook? Do you love to bake? Do that. Do you love to draw? Did you love to design things? Well, maybe you could help out with some graphic art and graphic design or social media things. So I think it's always a good clue of what are the things that you were drawn to as a little kid and how can you bring them into your current situation?
Because that's the thing is, I think we're all very creative in music, and this creativity is not limited to the things we do with our instruments or our voice. But I mean, I find for me, the podcast I feel very creative when I make it.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, it was funny. I'm going to have a sip of coffee and the listeners can see me. I've been sipping coffee. It's like having coffee with Kate. But when I was a kid, I was dreaming of being a reporter. Ooh. And I would also play teacher, and I would go where my mom worked, and they had these classrooms with boards, like the green boards. I think they're called blackboards in English, but they were green. So I'm going to call them green boards with the chalk. And then I would just play and pretend to be teaching classrooms. And I had a big moment years ago when I covered the fish off competition as a brand new podcaster, where I was interviewing someone with my phone, holding my phone to their face, interviewing them. And I had this realization of, wow, as a kid, I dreamed of being a reporter, but I became a musician. Look at me today. What I'm doing is reporting.
Yes.
And I thought it was so interesting. And in my coaching work, it feels so much like being in the classroom and teaching people on topics that I'm so excited about. So it's really funny what you say about what are the things that you liked when you were a child, because I feel like I am slowly mixing all of these things I loved: playing music,
Yeah. Isn't that
coaching,
great? And
podcast.
Yeah. And don't you feel like you're 100% you when you're combining all of those loves?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling.
And this creative outlet of podcasting, of coaching, makes me enjoy performing even more.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy playing the violin
Yeah.
these days.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. I mean, as you said, I think for me, I didn't feel such a creative pull when I was playing the cello. Yes, I mean, when you're practicing and you're figuring things out and you're thinking about phrasing, but still, I've never had an interest in composing, but I always was very like, well, Brahms wrote this sonata and I'm playing it.
Yeah.
And so I always felt like there was a limit to my creativity as a cellist. And I feel it much more in these other ways. I feel like I'm being creative in service to music still.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that feels right to me. That feels right to me.
That is amazing. What are some things that, like, someone sitting at home today, or if you're watching us live, don't hesitate to put in your questions. If they have an idea or something that crosses their mind, but they always brush it off as in, oh, I'm just dreaming, this would never happen. What is something that they could do to get started on this road of maybe exploring if this could happen?
Yeah. I would write about it. I would write. First of all, I would just spend some time saying, I'm going to assume the yes, which is, I say all the time. If I am to like ask somebody if they want to do something, I'll assume the yes.
Ooh,
they say no, I'll deal with it, but assume the yes, right? Go into it saying like, okay, I have this idea. I'm going to assume that it's going to work. What would that look like for my life, for my family? How would that affect my life?
Mm-hmm.
Let's assume that it works and it's a great thing and it didn't ruin my reputation. People didn't wonder who I thought I was to do it. All of those things that we're worried about, it just goes really well. And just take some time to sort of envision what that looks like in your life and get really comfortable with that. Because usually what happens is people say, yeah, no, that's what I want. That's how I want my life to look. And okay, well, then why wouldn't you go for that if that's what you want your life to look like? Yeah. And then I would break it down and say, okay, what things need to happen, right? What things do I need to put into place? Maybe 5 big bullet points. And if you don't know, ask people who have done it. Sometimes that's not possible. If I wanted to know, what are the 5 things I need to put in place to do a virtual music festival? Like, well, nobody had done it before. There was nobody to ask, but I could ask people who had put on, virtual conventions. I guess those hadn't happened either, but, in-person festivals. Mm-hmm. I talked to people who had done in-person festivals. I had done them myself. And I just sort of figured, okay, what are the things that need to happen? And then maybe do a little bit of research. And the name of the game at this point, at the beginning stages, is make 2 lists. One list, the things that you do know how to do. Mm-hmm. right? What skills do you have? What do you know needs to happen? Which ones can you do? And then what do you need to figure out? If it's a skill, get on it, get on Google, read a book, ask someone for help. If it's information, you can find that easily. And just start filling in the blanks.
That's
awesome. All it is. It's just filling in the blanks.
And I don't know if you agree with me. Also, I wanted to say also, if you have these ideas, you should get in touch with Kate and get a coach, because
for sure.
For me, I know how coaching has changed and continues to change my life all the time. And I cannot speak enough of how valuable coaching is. But it's really amazing how it is both easier and more difficult than we think.
Mm-hmm.
And at times it's so tempting to give up because it is so hard, but it is always worth it. But at the same time, many of the other things are a lot easier. And then you look back and you realize, look at this thing that I've created. It was, first of all, so much easier. I never thought I could do that. And of course, in the process of creating anything, you'll have to face a lot of limiting beliefs and challenges and stepping outside of your comfort zone. Those are the harder things. But it's so worth it, I would say. I love this.
Absolutely. I mean, even the first year I did the virtual summer cello festival, I can't remember what point it was, but there came a point where I thought, all right, this is hard, and maybe people won't want it. I think this is something people will really want, but maybe I'm wrong. And I really was full of that self-doubt. And I have this image firmly in my brain. This did not happen. There was no swimming pool. There was no diving board, but I have this image in my head of me climbing up to dive off a diving board and chickening out and saying, no, I'm not going to do it. And having my coach on the stairs, pushing my bum back up saying, jump, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what a coach will do. She didn't give me the answers. She didn't tell me, oh, no, you just need to do this. And she didn't even say, no, people want it. People want it. She didn't say that. She just said, just keep going, keep moving forward. What's the next step?
Pushed you on the butt
up those stairs. Yeah. So, I think working with a coach is absolutely important. To keep you accountable, to help you in those moments of self-doubt. And resistance is another one. Resistance is a big one.
Yeah.
I see with my clients. And that's what I'm there to do, push them through it. I had a client just this morning who was feeling very resistant to her next steps and feeling very down and exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And she was exhausted by her resistance, right? By her inaction. And she needed to raise a certain amount of money. And I said, just give it your all, send out some emails, just do it, and keep going, keep moving forward. And, I bet you'll raise the money by noon. And I swear to God, by noon, she had raised every cent. And and it, it's encouragement. Encouragement. And of course, a lot of other, we coaches do go to school and do learn skills for this. So there's a lot more to it, but on the basic level.
What's the resistance? When you talk about resistance, what's some of the resistance you've seen from your clients?
The resistance that I've seen is, when they have to make a scary phone call, an intimidating phone call or an email to somebody who they respect, they will find reasons why maybe they're not the best person after all, or suddenly, they have a cold and so they really need to rest. When this person normally would just be like, oh yeah, I have a cold, get on with it. So yeah, it's when you see them using any excuse not to move forward and trying to justify their lack of inaction. That's resistance. I mean, it comes in all forms. I mean, sometimes it comes in really unhealthy forms, self-sabotage. Those are sad situations, but they hit the artistic community a lot, unfortunately. Yeah. But, not practicing for a competition, right? When you have time and you just procrastinate. Yeah. You clean your house 10 times, but you don't go over that passage once. Yeah. So resistance comes in all forms.
Yeah. And it's rooted in fear.
Yeah. And for anybody who for this resonates with, if you check out the book by Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art is a great book. It talks about resistance and battling resistance.
And as you were talking, I was thinking, that's one of my favorite things about the pandemic. I did not hate everything about the pandemic. There's many things I enjoyed. And that was one of my favorites, is how all of a sudden there were no rules anymore. And I mean, we saw how the biggest orchestras and the biggest opera houses no longer could, follow their own rule books. They had to change things. But for all of us individuals, I think that we also, first of all, need to reach out to each other and need to create in one way, shape, or form. And what I'm hoping stays with us is, I think we realize that there are no longer the gatekeepers that used to exist. And that now with the technology that we have, anyone can create anything that they want and put it out there. And I hope that all of this, bubbling energy of creativity that we saw continues. And some of these things that were online, it was so great to see it streaming. And my dream is that we start to see them, yes, still streaming, but that people take that and, present it live in person. And that really helps rejuvenate the classical music community. I want to see new organization popping up everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also would add that because of what happened, because of what we saw, I think to sum it up, you could say those large organizations are so difficult to maneuver quickly. Yeah. Right? It's not that they were incompetent. It's not that they were inept. It's not that they weren't sensitive to what was going on. I mean, some maybe more than others, but it takes a lot. There are so many people involved to make a decision to pivot in just the slightest way for an organization. But for one person to have an idea and execute it, it happens overnight. And so what we saw in the last couple of years is the opportunity for individuals to really come up and make a difference, to take on some leadership roles, to step up, see a problem or see something that was missing, that was lacking, right? In my case, there's no festival for these students. I'll make a festival. For other people, there's no access to lessons for these people. I'll create access for them. Whatever it is, we saw, okay, well, the big organizations are not just going to swoop in and fix everything for us the way we expected in the past. And I believe that will remain. I think that there's room for both. I don't think that, big arts organizations are going to disappear, nor do I think they should. I think they absolutely serve an incredible purpose and a function in our industry. But I think that there is now, we've seen that there's room for both.
Yeah. There's room for everything.
Yeah. Possibilities are endless.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. This is an abundant universe. You just used the word that made me think, because I'm your friend. I know about it too, but I saw that it came out today. And I think it's related to what we're just talking about, that you're launching the Creative Leadership Summit.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
I'm so excited about this. This has been brewing in my mind for a while. And, as I said, the two biggest things that I'm hearing whenever I talk to people who want to step up in some way or want to change their career in some way is that they don't know where to start and they don't know what skills they need. They don't know what they have to do. And so with my Creative Leadership Summit, which is happening online on Zoom from Tuesday, June 28th through Friday, July 1st of this year. So in 2 weeks, starting 2 weeks from today, for those of you who are watching live. And I'm gathering people from all over the arts industry. So we have people from music, from dance, from theater, from the visual arts, and in fact, most of them have a musical background in some way, which I think is interesting. And they have stepped up. And so the idea is that these are artists themselves, right? These aren't people who trained in some academic field and then went into arts administration. These are artists who have taken that step and put themselves into some kind of leadership position, whether it's with an organization or with a community or with a project of their own. So it's going to be inspirational stories every day. It's going to be kind of interview session format where I ask them how they got started, what they had to figure out, what steps they took in their journey. And then there's a bonus session each day that talks about something specific, like doing some PR for your project, or writing grants, or building relationships with donors, and cultivating that. And then on Friday, I'm going to be leading a masterclass on leadership, talking about the skills that we need to build and how to sort of figure out that clarity and what we know, what we don't know, all of that good stuff. So I'm very excited. And you should all come.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Because it's true what you said at the beginning. It's nice to have an idea and give yourself permissions to even have the idea and not just brush it off. But where do you begin?
Absolutely. That's the hardest question. And so that's what we're hoping to answer, just to give, I think, what I'm hoping to show with the summit is that there are going to be 12 different stories and 12 people starting in 12 different ways. Mm-hmm. But the point is that they started, and I hope to create a sense of community, with all of these people who are all there wanting to step up, which should help with that whole, well, what will people think of me? Well, what do you think of the people around you? You think they're pretty great, right? So that sense of community, maybe some networking, it's never a bad thing, and a lot of inspiration and some skills that you'll walk away with that will help you get going. So I'm very excited. General admission is free, and by that I mean, if you just want to come to the sessions live and watch them on Zoom, it's absolutely free to you. For $97, less than $100, you can get a VIP pass. And you can get recordings of the sessions. You can watch them later or on your own time. You get access to the bonus sessions each day, and you get access to the Friday masterclass. So it's quite the deal. I want to make it as accessible to as many people as possible. So it's going to be great. I'm really excited.
Give me all the details. They're all going to be on your website, I'm guessing.
They are, and I'll give you the page, the exact page for that as well.
I'll put that in the show notes when this episode comes out. Yes, that's right. And I feel like, I want to ask you some rapid fire question that we all know are not so rapid, but there's also one thing that you said is how you give me so many ideas. I have all these ideas in my head, but how can you show up as a leader anywhere is such a powerful idea. So I wanted to mention it again, because it's true that sometimes it just takes one person to change the atmosphere, the way things happen in one community. And you don't have to be the designated leader of that community to show up as a leader to change the culture wherever you are. So I think that I love this idea of, yes, both following our dreams in terms of if we have ideas of things we want to create outside of what we're currently doing. And if you want to completely change your life, that's awesome, go for it. But then there's also people who want to keep the life that they have and they love it and they're interested in exploring maybe other ventures just to keep, things interesting, but also getting some ideas on how to make the life that they currently have within the artistic communities that they work with even much, I don't know if that's English, even much more, that's not English, even more enjoyable, fulfilling, dynamic, vibrant. Yeah. I
Yeah,
hope
I don't
that
think,
makes sense
I
what I'm
don't,
saying.
yeah, absolutely. I don't think any of us, well, I don't think that we all want to be, in the spotlight, president of Juilliard, that kind of leadership is not what everybody's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are saying, well, I just think that this should happen in the community and I'd be willing to help make that happen, which is amazing. But even if you love sitting in the section, you don't want to be principal, that's just it's not your scene. That's great. But I don't think anybody wants to live their entire life or their entire career just being told what to do and not having any agency over their career and their life. I don't think that ever feels good. We only have one life. We kind of know how we want it to look and how we want it to feel. And I would encourage those people to maybe just try it out, baby steps, like make some cookies for rehearsal, plan a family movie night, like plan something within your own safe, secure world where you take the lead and say, we're going to watch this movie and order pizzas and make ice cream sundaes. It's going to be great, right? So I think that you can practice and, as you said, just find that sense of leadership in whatever way feels comfortable, especially if you just want to try it on for size. See where it takes you. You never know. Could be president of Juilliard in a year.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
Kate, I would love to ask you some rapid fire question. First, tell me about the habit. What's a habit that you have that contributed to your success?
Habit. Well, I mentioned it before. I'll give you another one. The one I mentioned before was that I dream long term and have a very short term to-do list. Mm-hmm. But another thing that I do is I have a habit of bringing intention to what I do. And that is something that I didn't used to do. I have built that intention of how do I want to show up in any given situation, whether that is in the practice room, how am I showing up? When I was preparing for concerts, it would go according to my mood. I'm tired, but I'm going to show up and just listen to intonation and work on that. A party, how do I want to show up? Teaching my students, if I've had a long, rough day, I still want to show up as a certain kind of teacher. So that's a habit that has really helped.
I love that. How about the skills? You've mentioned several, but still, skills you think young musicians studying today should acquire in addition to learning to play their instruments?
The number one skill I think young musicians need to acquire is to stop worrying what other people think of them, which is so hard because we are trained from day one to worry about what people think of us, right? We play in our lesson, we get feedback. Our whole career has been based on getting feedback from people. And that feedback is important, don't get me wrong, but not to be concerned with what other people think of the decisions you're making about your own life and career. They're too busy worrying about their own life and career anyway. They probably don't notice what you're doing. But I think that will give you freedom to make the right decisions for you.
Yeah. That's so great. So important to make that. And that's something you said also about your own life, this you didn't use the word empowerment, but that's, I'm guessing, maybe how it felt when you made these decisions, knowing that they were the right decisions for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about a favorite book or books?
Oh. Well, I mentioned the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, but my other favorite book, well, it's twofold. If you are struggling with what path you want to take in music, whether that is, do I go into it professionally? Do I not? Do I continue? Whatever it is, I can't recommend The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron highly enough. I mean, it's just such a beautiful book. It's very circular. It takes you through it over and over in different ways and will bring you great clarity. If you do know what you want to do, you have a good idea of what you want to do and just aren't sure how to do it, I love Brendan Burchard's High Performance Habits. And he has 6 distinct things that he encourages you to do, and great insights. And he has worked with high performers in every industry and sort of boiled down what they had in common. It's a great book.
Awesome.
And a very easy read.
My husband will be happy to see the Amazon box on my porch.
I'm so jealous we don't get Amazon here.
Oh, no, but you have the beach.
We have the beach. It's true.
What is, if not the best advice, at least one of a great piece of advice that was given to you that you'd like to pass on to the listeners?
I would have to say it's something that Gary Hoffman, the brilliant cellist, told me once. He came to play a concerto with us at New World, and we were all having dinner with the cello section and him afterwards. And I asked him what advice he would give us as performers, soloists, cellists, and he said, the most important thing to understand is that 95% of the time when you perform, you're going to feel like crap. He's like, whether you're jet lagged and the rehearsal is like at 4 a.m. your time, or you caught a cold on the plane and your nose is running, or you're just not feeling well, or something happened in your personal life. He said, more often than not, you are not going to feel 100% when you go out to perform. Mm-hmm. And you have to, A, get out there and do it anyway, and B, understand that you can get out there and do it anyway. You don't have to feel 100% to perform well. And he went on to say that the mistake he saw in a lot of young performers is that they would cancel things because they didn't mm-hmm. feel well. And that did more damage than if they had just gone on. So that has helped me, obviously, in my performing life, because, he was right. Like, you get on there, the chair is not quite the right height, or they moved it, something's not right.
Yeah.
But also just in everything that I do, you can't let that stop you. It's so easy to use it as an excuse and just say, yeah, I don't feel 100%. Of course, you have to take care of yourself, but you can do it anyway. Do it anyway.
Yeah. That's a powerful thought, because it's right. Like, now I have my coach hat on, because it's what you make that mean to how you're feeling.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, like, if you are seriously ill, of course you have to deal with that. I'm not talking about like you have the flu and you're very sick. I'm talking about just not feeling great. Mm-hmm. And knowing that it's just like nerves, right? Of course you're nervous. You don't cancel the performance. So yeah, that advice has served me well in many capacities.
Thank you for sharing. How about an actionable tip?
An actionable tip. Okay. This is one of my favorite activities. I do it every week. I do this every Sunday. And I do it in every aspect of my life that I'm kind of working on, if it's a project or a personal thing. But I would choose one area in your life. If it's a piece of music that you're working on, if it's a project that you're working on, pick one thing and think about one thing that would move it ahead in this next week, right? If you're preparing for a performance, if you if you got all of the bowings and fingering, if you settled on what you want those to be in the whole first movement this week, that would be moving the needle forward. If you memorized the first page this week, right, that would be moving the needle forward. But pick something, and you can do it for as many areas of your life as you want. But just know that in a week's time, you'll be a certain point ahead. It feels amazing to be able to see that progress rather than, yeah, I'm still working on it. Yeah, I'm still working on it. To be able to say, well, I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. It's awesome. Super motivating.
I love that. That precision. Yeah.
And intention, right? Then you're showing up with a specific thing in mind.
Yeah. Yes. Kate, thank you so much for sitting with me and sharing this amazing insight with the listeners. And I just can't thank you enough for all of this wisdom. And I hope everybody check out that Creative Leadership Summit, that they go on your website and check out all of your resources. Kate has so many awesome clients doing amazing things, and they love her. So if you have any ideas of projects that are just kind of nagging at you, just that one idea that keeps popping in and you're curious, you offer calls to sort of dig in to see what that could look like to work with you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Reach out. I offer free 30-minute consultations. You can talk about your project and what ideas you have and what your best next step might look like. And Renee, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk with you about these things. And thank you for sharing me with your listeners and vice versa.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for those of you saying hi. Bye.
Hi. I can't see comments, but hi.